Captain Greg Patterson stood by the large window of his ship, the Unity. He looked down at the planet below. It was covered in ice and snow as far as he could see. The planet was called Kepler 452f. It was a frozen world far from Earth. No one lived there, at least that is what they thought. The ice field stretched out like a wide ocean. The sun hit the ice and made it sparkle with many colors. It was beautiful but cold, very cold. The Unity had been circling the planet for 3 days. They were doing normal survey work, taking pictures, recording data. Nothing exciting. Then Lieutenant Katie Morrison walked up to him. She held a small computer screen in her hands. Her face showed confusion. Greg had worked with Katie for 2 years. He knew that look. When Katie looked confused, something interesting was happening. Katie handed him the screen. She spoke quickly. Her voice was excited but worried at the same time. She told Greg that they were picking up a strange signal. It was a distress signal, but it was not like any signal they had seen before. The frequency was completely new. It did not match any known species in their database. Greg looked at the screen. He saw waves of sound moving up and down. The pattern looked desperate. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to be calling for help. When they played the sound through their speakers, it was haunting. It was a low, sad cry. It reminded Greg of something crying, something in pain and afraid. Greg asked where the signal was coming from. Katie told him it was coming from the northern ice shelf. It was about 200 kilometers away from where they were floating in space. The signal had been broadcasting for at least 6 hours, maybe longer. They only found it now because the atmosphere had been blocking it. Greg pulled up maps of the planet on his own screen. The northern shelf was a dangerous place. It was full of deep cracks in the ice. The ice was unstable. Nothing should be alive down there. All their surveys said this planet had no life, no animals, no plants, just ice and rock and empty space. But something was down there now. Something was calling for help. Greg made his decision quickly. He told Katie to prepare a shuttle team. They would need full environmental suits, the kind that kept you warm in extreme cold. They would also need rescue equipment, ropes, cables, medical supplies. If something was in trouble, they needed to go help. 30 minutes later, 5 people were sitting in a small shuttle. It was dropping through the thin atmosphere of the planet. Besides Greg and Katie, they had brought 3 other crew members. Dr. Alan Hughes was their expert on alien life. Carlos Rivera was their engineer. He fixed things and solved problems. Linda Chang was their security officer. She kept them safe. The shuttle followed the distress signal. It led them toward a massive canyon made of ice. As they got closer, Alan leaned forward in his seat. His eyes went wide. He told Greg that his scanners were reading biological signatures. Living things. Large living things. The thermal scans showed heat signatures. Something was alive down there. And it was huge. The shuttle landed on a flat piece of ice near the edge of the canyon. Outside, the temperature was minus 40 degrees. That was 40 degrees below freezing, cold enough to kill a human in minutes without protection. The wind was howling. It pushed against the shuttle hard enough to make it shake. They put on their suits quickly. The helmets showed them information about the air and temperature. Everything was red warnings, dangerous, too cold. Not breathable, but the suits would protect them. They stepped out into the frozen world. The distress call was much louder here. It echoed off the ice walls around them. The sound made Greg feel sad. It was so desperate, so afraid. He led his team carefully toward the edge of the canyon. They walked slowly. The ice was slippery. One wrong step could send them falling. When they reached the rim and looked down, they all stopped moving. No one spoke for a long moment. They just stared. At the bottom of the canyon, 50 meters below them, was a creature. It looked like nothing Greg had ever seen. It was similar to an elephant from Earth, but it was different in many ways. It was alien. Its body was covered in thick fur. The fur was blue and white, but the fur was glowing. It gave off light from inside. The glow pulsed slowly. The creature had 4 massive legs. Its feet were wide and flat, perfect for walking on ice. Its trunk was longer than an elephant trunk, more flexible. At the end of the trunk were 3 finger-like parts. They moved and grasped at the air. The most amazing part was its eyes. They were large and golden. They glowed with a soft amber light. The eyes looked intelligent. They looked scared, and the creature was trapped. It was wedged between two huge walls of ice. Its body was half buried in snow. It was young. Greg could tell it was just a baby, maybe like a teenager in human years. The creature was making the distress call. The deep cry came from its throat. It spoke of fear and pain and loneliness. The creature's legs moved weakly. It was trying to climb out, but the ice under it was too smooth. Its feet could not grip. Every time it tried to move, it slid back down. It was stuck. It had probably been stuck for hours. Linda asked how it got down there. Her voice was quiet, full of wonder. Alan was already using his scanners. He studied the canyon walls. He told them it looked like an ice shelf collapse. The edge of the canyon had broken recently. He pointed to cracks in the ice above. The whole section had given way. The baby creature must have been walking on top when it broke. It fell through into the canyon. Katie suddenly spoke urgently. She was looking at her scanner. She told Greg that she was reading more biological signatures. More of these creatures, big ones. They were coming toward this location, fast. They were about 10 kilometers away, getting closer every second. Greg felt his heart beat faster. He asked if it was the herd. Alan confirmed it. Probably the mother, he said. These creatures appeared to be social animals. They lived in groups. The mother had probably been searching for her baby since it fell. She was coming to find it. The baby cried out again. Its glowing fur pulsed brighter. The light flashed with its distress. The sound cut through the wind. It was raw, desperate, heartbreaking. Greg looked down at the trapped creature. Then he looked at his team. His mind was made up. He told them they had to help it. His voice was firm. There was no question in his tone. Linda spoke carefully. She reminded him about the rules. The Prime Directive. It was a law that said they should not interfere with alien life, especially life that was not advanced. They were supposed to observe only. Greg interrupted her. He said the Prime Directive was about protecting civilizations, about not changing their natural growth. But this was different. This was a rescue. They had the tools. They had the ability. They had time before the mother arrived. They were going to do this. They were going to save this creature. He turned to Carlos. He asked if they could get the creature out. Carlos was already thinking. His eyes moved rapidly as he looked at the canyon, at the trapped baby, at their equipment. He said maybe they would need to go down using the shuttle's cargo cables. If they could wrap the cables around its body without scaring it, the shuttle's winch should be strong enough to lift it. But he warned Greg that the mother would arrive before they finished. Greg nodded. Then they had better move fast, he said. He gave orders quickly. Carlos and Linda would come with him. They would go down into the canyon. Katie would go back to the shuttle. She would prepare the winch system. Get everything ready to lift. Alan would monitor the incoming creatures. He would keep Greg updated on how close they were getting. The team moved into action. They had worked together for years. Everyone knew their job. Katie ran back to the shuttle. Carlos started unwinding the heavy cables. They were thick and strong, made to lift cargo containers. Greg and Linda worked on securing anchor points in the ice. They drilled deep holes. They tested each anchor twice. Everything had to be perfect. One mistake could kill them all. Below them, the baby continued to cry. Its golden eyes watched their movements. The look in those eyes was disturbing. It looked like hope. The creature seemed to understand that they were trying to help. But it was afraid to believe it. Alan's voice came through their helmet speakers. He told Greg the herd was now 7 kilometers away. And there was more. It was not just the mother coming. The whole herd was traveling together. They were all coming to find the lost baby. Greg looked at the canyon wall. 50 meters of ice. Then he looked at his team. Then down at the creature. They had started something now. They could not stop. They had to finish this rescue before the herd arrived, because when those massive creatures got here, there was no telling what would happen. The mother might see them as threats. She might attack to protect her baby, or she might understand they were helping. There was only one way to find out. Greg clipped his harness to the rope. He tested it one more time. Then he looked at his team and nodded. It was time to go down. Greg secured his harness and tested the line one more time. 50 meters of ice wall stretched below him. At the bottom, the trapped baby watched with those strange golden eyes. Its cries had changed. They were less panicked now. But they were more sad. More lonely. It was like the creature understood that help was coming but was afraid to hope. Greg spoke into his helmet radio. He tested the communication. Katie's voice came back clear from the shuttle. She told him the winch was ready. All systems were working. But Alan had bad news. The herd was at 5 kilometers now. They had maybe 12 minutes. 12 minutes to climb down, to secure the cables around a dangerous alien creature, to lift it out. It did not seem like enough time. Greg looked over at Carlos and Linda. They were also harnessed and ready to descend. He reminded them to go slow and steady. They did not know how the creature would react to them. For all they knew, humans might look like predators to it. It might think they were coming to hurt it. Not help it. Linda made a joke. Maybe it thinks we are food, she said. Greg smiled despite the tension. He told her thanks for that thought. Then he said it was time to go. He stepped backward off the edge of the canyon. The descent was hard. The ice walls were slick and dangerous. Chunks broke away under their weight. The pieces fell into the canyon below. Greg focused on his breathing. He moved hand over hand down the rope. His boots tried to find places to stand. The wind inside the canyon was worse than above. It swirled and changed direction. His suit worked hard to keep him warm. As they went down, the baby's glow became more clear. Its fur did not just glow. It pulsed with patterns. Waves of blue light rippled across its body. Bursts of brighter white appeared near its head and trunk. The patterns looked like they meant something, like they were a form of communication. Alan's excited voice came through the radio. He was analyzing the light patterns from the shuttle. He told Greg it was definitely communication. The frequency changed. The intensity changed. The pattern duration changed. All of it varied with the creature's sounds. This species might have 2 ways of talking. Sound and light together. Greg grunted as he climbed. His arms were burning from the effort. He asked Alan if he could understand any of it. Alan said not yet, but the patterns that went with the distress calls were clear. Rapid pulses, high intensity, concentrated on the back. If he had to guess, Alan said, the creature was signaling panic and calling for help. Greg reached the bottom first. His boots crunched into the snow at the base of the canyon. The baby was even more impressive up close. It was huge, easily the size of a small elephant from Earth. But there was grace in how it was built. Every part of its body was made for living on ice. It was perfectly adapted to this frozen world, and it was very afraid. The moment Greg's feet touched the ground, the baby's eyes locked onto him. The glowing patterns shifted. They became wild and bright. The creature tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. It was stuck between the ice walls, its trunk raised up. It made a new sound. Not the distress call. Something else. Maybe a warning. Maybe a plea. Greg held up his hands slowly. He spoke softly. He told the creature to stay calm. They were here to help. Of course, the animal could not understand his words, but tone was often the same across species. He kept his voice low and gentle. Carlos and Linda touched down beside him. They spread out slowly. They gave the baby space. All their movements were careful and calm. Alan's voice cut through. 4 kilometers, he said. Captain, you need to hurry. Greg acknowledged but kept his attention on the baby. Carlos was already studying the situation. He told Greg they needed to get the cables under its body, around the chest area. That would be the best lift point. But the ice walls were pinning the creature. If they tried to force the cables through, they might hurt it. Linda had an idea. What if they melted the ice a bit? Their suits had heating elements built in. They could soften the ice walls enough to work the cables through. Greg agreed. It was a good plan. He gave orders. Carlos would handle the cables. Linda and Greg would work on melting the ice. And everyone needed to move slowly. No sudden movements that might scare the creature. They began the careful work. Linda and Greg activated their heating elements. They pressed their gloved hands against the ice near the baby's body. The ice started to soften. Water trickled down in small streams. The baby watched them. Its trunk moved carefully, exploring the air around these strange beings. Then something unexpected happened. Something that changed everything. The baby's trunk reached toward Greg. The three finger-like parts at the end spread wide. It touched his helmet, very gently, almost like it was curious. Greg forced himself to stay still. He could feel vibrations through his glove. A deep rumbling that came from inside the creature's body. The glowing patterns shifted again. They became slower, more rhythmic. Alan's voice was full of wonder. "Captain," he said, "it is calming down. Look at the light patterns. They have completely changed. I think it is trying to communicate with you. I think it is trying to tell you something." Greg slowly raised his hand. He placed it on the trunk. Even through the thick glove, he could feel warmth. He could feel the strength in the creature's movements. Greg spoke quietly. "I think you are right," he told Alan. "I think it understands we are here to help." The trust the baby was showing made everything easier. It stopped trying to struggle. It allowed them to move the heavy cables around its body. Carlos was very careful. He positioned the cables to spread the weight evenly, not too tight. He did not want to cause pain, but secure enough to hold during the lift. Alan reported again. 3 kilometers. And Captain, the thermal readings show the leader of that herd is huge. Twice the size of the baby. Maybe more. Greg acknowledged the warning. Carlos said they were almost done. The cables were in place. He told Katie to start the winch, slow and steady. The cables went tight. Greg held his breath. The shuttle's engines made a high whining sound as the winch engaged. Slowly, very slowly, the baby began to rise. The ice walls that had trapped it cracked. They broke away. The creature's legs found purchase in the snow. It pushed with its feet. The humans pushed from below, and suddenly the baby was free of the wedge. But they were not done yet. The baby was suspended now. The cables held it secure as the winch pulled it upward toward the surface. Greg, Carlos, and Linda clipped onto their climbing lines. They began to ascend alongside the creature. The baby's eyes followed Greg's movements. Its trunk reached out again, touching his suit, like it was seeking comfort, seeking reassurance. Alan's voice was tense. 2 kilometers. "Captain, you need to be at the top in 3 minutes, or you will meet that mother while you are still in the canyon." Greg said they were working on it. His words came out through gritted teeth. His arms felt like they were on fire. Every muscle was screaming at him. But he pushed upward, hand over hand, foot by foot. Below, the baby hung peacefully in its harness. Its glowing light showed calm patterns now, steady and slow. Above, Greg could see the canyon rim. He could see the lights from the shuttle. They were going to make it. They were actually going to pull this off. And then the ground shook. The entire ice shelf trembled. The vibration was not from an earthquake. It was from something massive. Something moving very fast. Greg looked up. He saw Alan's face through the shuttle window. Alan was gesturing wildly. His expression was urgent. The ground shook again. Chunks of ice began breaking away from the canyon edge. Alan's voice shouted in their helmets, "Move, move, move." The herd was here. The mother had arrived, and she was not alone. Greg yelled at his team to climb faster. The winch was pulling the baby up at maximum safe speed. But it was not fast enough. They were still 10 meters from the top. Alan gave them the distance. 100 meters. She was 100 meters away and closing fast. Greg pushed harder. His hands grabbed the rope. His legs pushed against the ice. Linda and Carlos were right behind him. The baby was clearing the canyon edge now. Still suspended in the cables, Greg's hands reached the top. He grabbed the edge and pulled himself up. Linda and Carlos came up right after him. The baby was just above the canyon rim, still hanging in the air. And that is when they all saw her, the mother. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. She was both at the same time. The mother was 3 times the size of her baby, a mountain of muscle covered in glowing fur. Her patterns were more complex, more intricate. Her tusks were massive. They curved upward like frozen lightning. Her eyes blazed with amber light. Those eyes showed intelligence. They showed fury. Behind her, more creatures appeared. 6 more adults. each one huge and powerful. The whole herd had come, and the mother was charging straight at them. Her feet pounded the ice. Each step made the ground shake. She was moving incredibly fast for something so large, 50 meters away. 40. 30. Linda shouted to cut the cables. She raised her weapon. They needed to get in the shuttle and take off. Right now. But Greg shouted back, "No, do not shoot. Everyone get to the shuttle. But keep the baby secured. Katie, keep that winch running. Do not stop." Linda argued. The mother was 50 meters away now. If she hit them, if she rammed the shuttle, they would all die. Greg said she would not hit them. His voice was firm. "She is here for her baby," he said. "Everyone inside the shuttle but leave the back door open." The mother raised her trunk slowly. Greg felt his heart pounding. This was the moment. This would decide everything. He raised his own hand without thinking. For a long moment they stood there, human and alien, connected by something that went beyond words or species. Something passed between them, understanding, recognition. Then the baby pushed past its mother. It came toward the shuttle, toward Greg. Its trunk reached out again. It touched Greg's hand one more time. The glowing patterns were calm now, steady and warm. Greg felt that same deep rumbling. Like the creature was purring, he spoke softly. "You are welcome, little one." The baby returned to its mother's side. The herd began to turn away. But before they left, the mother looked back. One more time. Her eyes met Greg's. And in that moment, he understood something important. This was not goodbye. This was recognition. This was a memory that both species would carry forward. Both would remember this day. The herd moved away across the ice fields. Their glowing bodies created a river of light in the frozen landscape. The team watched until the creatures disappeared into the distance. Swallowed by the ice storm, no one spoke for a long time. They just stood there, processing what had happened. Katie broke the silence. Her voice was quiet, full of wonder. "Captain," she said, "in all my years I have never seen anything like that. I have traveled to dozens of worlds, met many alien species, but I have never seen anything like what just happened here." Greg nodded. He still could not speak. His hand was still raised, as if the baby's trunk might return at any moment. Finally, he lowered his hand. He turned to his team. His voice was firm when he spoke. "Get me a full analysis of everything we recorded," he said. "Bioscans, communication patterns, behavioral data, everything. We just made first contact with an intelligent species. I want to make sure we understand what happened here today. I want it all documented." Linda asked if they should report this to command. Greg was quiet for a moment. He was thinking. "Yes," he said finally. "We report it, but we are recommending this planet be made a protected zone. No exploitation, no colonization, just observation and study from a distance. These creatures deserve to live their lives without interference from us." Alan spoke up. "Agreed," he said. His voice was firm. The others nodded. Everyone was in agreement. As they boarded the shuttle and prepared to return to the Unity, Greg took one last look at the ice fields. Somewhere out there, a herd of incredible creatures was continuing their journey, and one small baby was alive because humans had chosen to help instead of ignore. It was, Greg thought, the best possible example of what humanity could be. Not conquerors, not exploiters, but helpers, protectors, friends to life in all its forms. He smiled as the shuttle lifted off. Today had been a good day. A very good day. Back on the Unity, the crew gathered in the observation room. They watched the ice planet slowly shrink as the ship moved into higher orbit. Alan had already started his analysis. He was surrounded by screens showing data, numbers, graphs, images of the creatures. His excitement was clear even through his exhaustion. "Captain, you need to see this," Alan said. He pulled up a large display. It showed the glowing patterns they had recorded, but now the patterns were broken down, analyzed, categorized. "This is not just communication," Alan explained. "This is language. A complete language system, as complex as any we have encountered." Greg moved closer. He studied the patterns. "Explain," he said. Alan's fingers moved across the controls. "The patterns have syntax," he said. "They have grammar. They even have what appears to be emotional context. Watch this." He showed a pattern from when the baby was trapped. The lights were rapid, chaotic, bright. Now watch this, Alan continued. He showed a different pattern. From when the baby first touched Greg's helmet, the pattern was slower, more deliberate. The difference is not just intensity, Alan said. It is structure. The baby was literally telling you it understood you were there to help. It was communicating complex ideas through light. What about the mother? Greg asked. Alan pulled up new patterns. This is where it gets really interesting, he said. When the mother approached us at the shuttle, her pattern showed what I can only describe as abstract concepts. Look at this sequence. He pointed to a specific pattern. It repeats 3 times, each with slight changes, Alan continued. I believe she was expressing 3 things: gratitude for saving her baby, recognition of our actions, and a promise of peace, a promise that we would not be seen as enemies. Greg felt a chill run down his spine. A promise, he repeated. Alan nodded. More than that. The final pattern right before she left was different. It was a signature, Captain, Alan explained further. She was telling us her name, or at least her identity, and she was acknowledging ours. It was a formal introduction, like meeting someone for the first time, but doing it properly, with respect. Greg sat down heavily. He was trying to process this information. These creatures were not just intelligent. They had culture. They had protocols. They had society. Katie entered the room. She was carrying her own data pad. Captain, I have something too, she said. I have been analyzing the audio component of their communication. The sounds they make, the patterns match some of the most complex whale songs from Earth, but more advanced, more intricate. These creatures do not just have language. They have culture. Katie pulled up her data. I am detecting what might be stories, she said. Histories passed through sound and light. Information encoded and transmitted. This is not simple communication. This is sophisticated. This is the kind of thing you see in advanced civilizations. But these creatures are still living naturally, still following migration patterns, still part of their world. Greg tried to understand what they were telling him. They had encountered intelligent species before, many times, but most were already advanced when humanity met them. They had cities, ships, technology. This was different. These creatures were intelligent and social, but they were still connected to their environment, still part of nature. It was a rare thing, a precious thing. Alan had more to show. There is something else, he said. He pulled up planetary surveys, maps of the ice fields. Captain, these creatures are not just native to this planet. They are the result of millions of years of evolution, specifically adapted to this environment. Look at their feet, their fur, their entire body structure. Everything is perfect for life on ice. But here is what is fascinating, Alan continued. This planet is warming slowly over thousands of years. But warming, the ice is receding. Eventually, this world will change. And these creatures will have to adapt. They will have to evolve new ways of surviving, new strategies. It is a critical time in their development. What are you saying? Greg asked. Alan met his eyes. I am saying these creatures are at a crossroads. As the ice melts, they will be forced to change, to develop new forms of communication, new social structures, maybe even new technology. Captain, we might be witnessing the beginning of a civilization, the very start of something that could become spacefaring one day. The implications were huge. First contact protocols existed for a reason, to prevent contamination of developing species, to allow natural evolution without interference. But they had already made contact. They had already changed things. By saving that baby, they had influenced this world. Had they done the right thing? Greg spoke firmly. We need to report this immediately to command, and we need to recommend strict observation protocols. No more direct contact, no interference. We watch, we study, but we do not interfere. These creatures deserve to develop naturally, to find their own path. Alan agreed. So did Katie. Linda nodded her support, but Alan had one more thing to show. Captain, this might change your perspective, he said. He pulled up a new map. It showed the northern hemisphere where they had done the rescue. I have been studying the herd's movement since they left. They are not migrating randomly. Look. He traced a path on the map. The path showed clear patterns. They are following ancient migration routes, Alan explained. Routes that have been used for centuries, maybe thousands of years. But here is what is interesting. He zoomed in on a particular region. Greg's breath caught. There were patterns carved into the ice. Huge patterns covering kilometers of the frozen surface. Are those? Greg started to ask. Alan finished for him. Bioluminescent patterns, but carved in ice and preserved. Captain, I think these are monuments, records. These creatures have been creating permanent markers of their history, of their stories. This is not just language. This is art. This is intentional preservation of knowledge. Greg stared at the patterns. His mind was trying to understand. The creatures they had saved were more than just intelligent animals. They were artists, historians, a species with culture and intention and memory. They recorded their past. They preserved their knowledge. They were so much more than anyone had thought. We need more time, Greg said finally. I'm recommending we extend our mission here. We need to document everything we can, build a comprehensive understanding of these creatures and their world, and then we need to make sure humanity never forgets what we found here. This is too important. Too special. Katie spoke quietly. There is something else, Captain. I have been monitoring communications from other ships. The story of the rescue has already spread through. 3 weeks passed. The Unity remained in orbit around Kepler 452F. The crew worked around the clock. They documented everything they could find. Every migration pattern, every carved monument in the ice, every sound and light pattern the creatures made. The data was vast, overwhelming, and absolutely fascinating. Alan had barely slept. He was obsessed with understanding these creatures. He had named them Luminari Magnificus, the Magnificent Light Bearers. It was a good name, a fitting name. Every day brought new discoveries about their complex society, their intricate language, their deep connection to their frozen world. Greg found Alan in the lab again. It was late or early. Time had lost meaning during this extended mission. Alan was studying a new set of ice carvings they had found. These were different from the others. More recent, created within the last few weeks. Greg knew what that meant. The herd had made them after the rescue. Alan looked up when Greg entered. Captain, he said, you need to see this. His voice was excited but also emotional. Greg approached the display. It showed high-resolution images of the ice carvings. They were beautiful, intricate, and they told a story. Alan explained what he was seeing. These patterns show a small figure trapped, Alan said. He pointed to the carvings. See here, the baby wedged between ice walls. And here, larger figures above reaching down. That is us, Captain. They carved an image of the rescue. And look at this section. This shows a moment of connection. The baby and one of the rescuers touching. Making contact, Greg stared at the images. He felt emotion rising in his chest. They remembered, he said quietly. Alan nodded. Not just remembered. They recorded it, made it permanent. This will last for centuries, maybe thousands of years. Future generations of their species will see this. They will know about the day strangers came from the sky to help. But there was more. Alan pulled up additional data. The really interesting part is the language patterns carved around the image, he said. I have been working with Katie to translate them. We think we understand the basic meaning now. It tells a story of fear and rescue, of trust between different beings, of compassion crossing the void. Alan continued. The story will be passed down through their culture, through the light songs they sing, through the patterns they carve. Captain, we have become part of their mythology, part of their history. For as long as this species exists, they will remember what happened here, what we did. Greg had to sit down. The weight of it was too much to process standing up. Katie entered the lab. She was carrying more reports. Captain, she said, I have news from command. They have reviewed our recommendations. The council has voted unanimously. Kepler 452F is now a protected world. No exploitation, no colonization, no interference, only observation from orbit, and they are sending a dedicated research station to monitor and study the Luminari. That is good news, Greg said. Very good news. But Katie had more to tell. The council is also using our experience to create new guidelines, new protocols for contact with developing intelligent species. They are calling them the Patterson Protocols. Named after you, Captain. Your decision to help that baby is changing how humanity approaches first contact. Greg shook his head. It should not be named after me, he said. It should be named after all of us. Every person on this crew made that rescue happen. Katie smiled. I told them that, but they insisted. They said you made the call. You took responsibility. That matters. Leadership matters. And your leadership showed the right path forward. Linda entered next. She looked tired but satisfied. Captain, she said, I have been coordinating with the Security Council. They want a full tactical analysis of the encounter with the herd, especially the moment when the mother charged. They want to understand how we managed a peaceful resolution without using weapons. It could change how we trained security personnel. Greg thought about that moment. The fear, the tension, the choice to trust instead of fight. Tell them the truth, he said. We did not have a plan. We just understood that violence was not the answer. That mother was not attacking. She was rescuing, just like us. We recognized that and gave her space to do what she needed to do. Carlos joined them in the lab. The whole team was together now. Captain, he said, engineering has been analyzing the equipment we used. The cables. The winch system. We are writing new specifications for rescue operations in extreme environments. What we did here is going to save lives, human and alien. The techniques we developed will be taught to every rescue team. Greg looked around at his team. These people had trusted him, followed him, risked their lives to save an alien creature they knew nothing about. They had done it because it was right, because helping was always the right choice. He felt proud. Proud of them. Proud of what they had accomplished together. Alan spoke again. There is one more thing, Captain. We have been tracking the herd, following their migration path. They are heading south now, toward a region we have not explored yet. I think they are going to their wintering grounds, a place where multiple herds gather. If we follow them, we might learn even more about their society. Greg considered it. But then he shook his head. No, he said. We have learned enough. More than enough. It is time to let them live their lives without us watching. We have the data we need. We have documented their language and culture. Now we need to step back. Give them privacy. Give them space to be who they are without human eyes always observing. The team understood. They agreed. They had done what they came to do. Made first contact, documented a new intelligent species, saved a life, changed the course of human history. It was enough. More than enough. It was time to move on. But none of them would ever forget this experience. This world. These incredible creatures. That night, Greg stood alone at the observation deck. He looked down at the ice fields one last time. Somewhere down there, a baby was playing with its herd, growing stronger, learning the light songs of its people, living because humans had chosen compassion over indifference. That thought made everything worthwhile. Katie joined him. She stood quietly beside him. After a while, she spoke. You know, she said, this changes everything, not just protocols or procedures, but how we see ourselves in the universe. We are not alone. And when we meet others, we do not have to be conquerors or exploiters. We can be friends. We can be helpers, Greg nodded. That is who I want us to be, he said. That is who humanity should be. Not perfect, we will make mistakes, but always trying to do the right thing. Always choosing compassion when we can. Always recognizing that life in all its forms is precious and deserves respect. Katie smiled. I think we are getting there, she said. One rescue at a time. The next morning, the Unity prepared to leave orbit. Final checks were completed. All systems were ready. Greg sat in the captain's chair and gave the order. Take us out, he said. The ship's engines powered up. The planet below began to shrink. Soon it would be just another point of light among millions, but it would never be forgotten. As they accelerated away, Alan called from his station. Captain, he said, I'm picking up something. A signal from the planet. From the herd. Greg felt his heart skip. What kind of signal, he asked. Alan studied his instruments. It is a light pattern, he said. Being broadcast from multiple sources. The whole herd is synchronized. All of them are displaying the same pattern. What does it mean? Greg asked. Alan was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. His voice was full of emotion. If I am translating correctly, Captain, they are saying goodbye and safe journey. They know we are leaving, and they are wishing us well. The bridge was silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing. They just stood there. Overwhelmed by the moment, Greg stood from his chair. He walked to the main view screen. He could see the planet below, and faintly, very faintly, he could see lights on the surface. The herd's glow. They were still there, still watching. He raised his hand one more time. A gesture they could not see, but it felt right. Goodbye, he said quietly. Live well, live long, be happy. Katie started a slow applause. Then Linda joined. Then Carlos and Alan. Soon the entire bridge crew was clapping. Not for themselves, but for what they had witnessed. For the connection they had made. For the proof that intelligence and compassion existed beyond Earth. That the universe was full of wonder, full of life, full of hope. The Unity's jump drive engaged. Space folded around them. In seconds they would be light years away, continuing their exploration of the frontier. But Greg knew that a part of him would always remain on that frozen ice shelf, looking into the eyes of a creature that had trusted him, that had shown him what connection across species could truly mean. Years would pass, many years. The Unity would complete its mission and return to Earth. Greg would retire from active service. But he would never stop thinking about the Luminari, about that baby and its mother, about the moment when two species recognized each other not as threats, but as fellow travelers in this vast universe. And on Kepler 452f, the Luminari would continue their migrations. They would carve new patterns in the ice. They would sing their light songs to their children. And they would remember the day strangers came from above. Remember the rescue. Remember that in the infinite darkness of space, kindness still existed. Compassion still mattered. Help was possible. Both species would carry this memory forward. Both would be changed. 10 years had passed since the rescue, a decade. In that time, the story of the Mammoth rescue had spread across human space. It was taught in schools, studied in universities, debated in council chambers. The images of the glowing creatures had been seen by billions. The recording of that moment when human and alien touched had moved countless hearts. Greg Patterson was no longer a ship captain. He had retired to a quiet life on a colony world. But the universe had not forgotten him. Every year on the anniversary of the rescue, he received messages. Thousands of them, from people whose lives had been changed by that story, from children who wanted to be explorers because of it, from scientists inspired to study alien life with compassion. On this particular morning, Greg sat on his porch watching the sunrise. His communicator chimed. It was Katie. She still served on exploration vessels, still traveled the stars, but they stayed in touch, always. She had news. The research station orbiting Kepler 452f had made a discovery, an important one. Greg accepted the call. Katie's face appeared on the screen. Her hair was grayer now, but her eyes still sparkled with that same curiosity and wonder. Captain, she said. Old habits died hard. She still called him Captain. You need to hear this. The Luminari have done something incredible, something we never expected. She sent him a data file. Greg opened it on his screen. It showed recent images from the planet, the northern ice shelf, the place where the rescue had happened. But something was different. Something new had been carved into the ice, a massive monument, far larger than any they had seen before, Katie explained. The herd returns to that spot every year, she said. On the anniversary of the rescue, they perform a ceremony, a light song that lasts for hours, and they have been adding to the monument, making it bigger, more detailed, more permanent. Captain, they have turned it into a sacred site, a place of remembrance. Greg stared at the images. He could see the patterns carved in ice, the small figure trapped, the larger figures descending, the moment of contact. But there were additions now, new carvings showing the years since, showing the baby grown into an adult, showing new babies born to that adult. The story continuing across generations, Katie continued. The baby is an adult now. She had offspring of her own. 3 calves, and here is the amazing part. She brings them to the monument every year. She shows them the carvings. She teaches them the light song about the rescue. She is passing the story down to her children, making sure they remember. Greg felt tears forming in his eyes. He did not try to hide them. Katie saw. She understood. Captain, she said gently, you saved more than one life that day. You saved a lineage, a family. Those 3 calves exist because their mother survived, and their children will exist, and their children's children. The ripples go on forever, but there was more news. Katie's expression became even more excited. The researchers have been studying the Luminaries' development. Their language has evolved, become more complex. They have developed new forms of art, new social structures. Captain, they are advancing. developing culture and technology at their own pace, and they are doing it naturally. Without our interference, that was important. That was everything. The Patterson protocols had worked. They had made contact, saved a life, but then stepped back, allowed the species to develop on their own, to find their own path, to become who they were meant to be. It was the right way, the only way. Greg felt pride in that. Katie had one final thing to share. The Council wants to send a delegation to Kepler 452F. Not to make contact, just to observe the anniversary ceremony from orbit. And they want you to lead it, Captain. They want you to be there, to witness what your actions created. Will you come? Greg thought about it. He was old now, tired, he had earned his rest, but this was too important to refuse. Of course, he said. I will come. I need to see this. I need to know they are okay. Katie smiled. I thought you would say that. I will send you the details. We leave in 2 weeks. See you then, Captain. 2 weeks later, Greg stood on the observation deck of a research vessel. It was smaller than the Unity, more specialized, but comfortable enough. With him were Katie, Alan, Carlos, and Linda. The entire original team had come. All of them older. All of them changed by time, but still connected by that shared experience a decade ago. They arrived at Kepler 4522F on the morning of the anniversary. The planet looked the same as Greg remembered. Ice and snow stretching endlessly. But Alan pointed out the differences. The ice had receded slightly. The planet was continuing its slow warming. The luminari were adapting, changing their migration patterns, evolving with their environment. As the ship settled into orbit, they saw them. The herd. Hundreds of luminari gathered at the northern ice shelf, around the monument. More than had been there 10 years ago. Multiple herds had come together. The glowing bodies created a sea of light on the frozen surface. It was beautiful, breathtaking, overwhelming, and then the ceremony began. The luminari formed circles around the monument. Their light patterns synchronized, pulsing together in perfect rhythm. The patterns told the story. The baby trapped, the strangers descending, the moment of trust, the reunion, the farewell. The entire rescue played out in light and sound. Alan was recording everything. His instruments captured every frequency, every pattern, every note. Captain, he said, his voice shook with emotion. This is their history, their mythology, their religion maybe. They have turned the rescue into something sacred, something that defines who they are as a species. Katie pointed to the center of the gathering. There, she said, that is her, the baby, the one we saved. Greg looked. In the center stood a large adult luminari, bigger than most, glowing brighter, and beside her were 3 smaller figures. Her calves, the next generation, the future. As they watched, the adult approached the monument. She touched it with her trunk. Her light patterns changed, became intensely personal, emotional. She was remembering, reliving that day. Then she turned to her calves. She showed them the carvings. She taught them the light song. She passed the memory forward. Carlos spoke quietly. You know what this means, Captain. It means we matter. What we did matters, not just to us, but to them, to their entire civilization. We are part of their history now, part of their identity. The story of the rescue will be told for as long as their species exists, Linda added her thoughts. And it shows that we made the right choice. We could have left. Could have said it was not our problem. But we helped. And because we helped, look what happened. A whole culture changed, enriched, made stronger by the memory of compassion from another species. The ceremony lasted for hours. The light songs were long and complex, beautiful and moving. When it finally ended, the herds began to disperse. But before they left, something unexpected happened. The adult, the one they had saved, looked up. Toward the sky, toward the ship in orbit. Her light patterns changed, became deliberate and clear. Alan gasped. He studied his instruments. Captain, he said, she knows we are here. I do not know how. Maybe she sensed the ship. Maybe it is just intuition. But she knows, and she is sending a message. What is she saying? Greg asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Alan translated. The patterns were complex, but the meaning was clear. She's expressing gratitude, remembrance, and promise. The same promise her mother made 10 years ago. Peace between our species. Mutual respect. She is renewing that promise for the next generation. Greg felt something break inside him. All the emotion he had held back for a decade came flooding out. He covered his face with his hands. Katie put her arm around his shoulders. The rest of the team stood close. They all understood. This moment was the culmination of everything they had worked for. Everything they believed in. After a long moment, Greg composed himself. He walked to the communication console. He asked the operator to open a channel, to broadcast a simple signal toward the planet. Just light, no sound. Just a pattern that the Luminari would understand. A pattern they had taught the researchers over the years. The pattern meant, we remember too. We honor you. Safe journey. The ship's lights flashed the pattern once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. On the surface below, the adult Luminari saw. Her light patterns changed again, responding, acknowledging. Understanding had passed between them once more. As the ship prepared to leave orbit, Greg took one last look at the ice fields. At the monument, at the herds moving away across the frozen landscape. He knew he would never return here. This was his final goodbye. But it was okay. He had seen what he needed to see. The continuation of life, the power of compassion, the lasting impact of one good choice. Katie stood beside him. She spoke softly. You know, she said, they are going to write books about this, make documentaries, study it for centuries. The Mammoth rescue will be remembered as a turning point in human history. The moment we proved we could be more than explorers. We could be guardians, protectors, friends. Greg nodded. But that is not why we did it, he said. We did not do it for glory or recognition. We did it because it was right. Because when someone cries for help, you answer. No matter who they are, no matter where they come from. That is what it means to be human. To be decent. To be good. Alan joined them at the window. He had finished his recordings. Captain, he said, I have decades of data now. Research papers to write. Lectures to